The Air Traffic and Navigation Services has now provided an update on the delays being experienced right across several airports in the country. This follows Airlink issuing a statement on Friday indicating that it was experiencing major disruptions to a number of its scheduled air services and airports including the Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport, Pietermaritzburg, Richards Bay and Mthatha are affected, and ATNS says that the last week it has now suspended 2 instrument flight procedures at the Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport due to compliance issues. And in the meantime, the body is looking to get an exemption to lift these suspensions from the South African Civil Aviation Authority.
Over a week ago, Air Traffic and Navigation Services suspended instrument flight procedures for runway 05 at Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport to ensure compliance with regulatory requirements and the company's safety management system. To lift the suspension of these procedures, ATNS wishes to inform industry stakeholders, passengers and the public that it has submitted an exemption application to the South African Civil Aviation Authority. As soon as the exemption application has been approved by the CAA, the procedures will be available for operational use. It is expected that a response from the regulator will be received very soon. In the interim, flight operations to this airport may be disrupted, particularly during inclement weather conditions.
Meanwhile, flights at the Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport have slowly resumed operations after delays left passengers there frustrated on Friday. According to a statement by Airlink, the disruptions were caused by South Africa's Air Traffic Navigation Services failure to maintain the validity of instrument flight procedures and weather conditions, as well as the suspension of the IFPs also place limitations on operations, they say. According to the statement, flights can only be permitted when all the safety regulations have been met. The wreckage of a light aircraft that was reported missing on Thursday has now been located in a remote area near Barberton in Mpumalanga. The Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Centre has, through a statement, confirmed that the pilot and sole occupant of the aircraft was found deceased on the scene. The aircraft was en route from King Mthatha, the 3rd International Airport, to the Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport when it went missing. The accident scene has since been handed over to SABC and the Civil Aviation Authority's Accident Division for further investigations. And for more on this, we've roped in aviation expert Dr. Guy Leitch. Dr. Leitch, it's always a pleasure. Welcome to the show. So please confide in us. ATNS says that last week it suspended 2 instrument flight procedures at the Kruger Mpumalanga International Airport due to compliance issues. And while apparently the body on the other side is looking to get an exemption to lift these suspensions from the South African Civil Aviation Authority. So what exactly is going on, Doctor?
Yeah, hi Alicia, good afternoon to you and your listeners. Well, it's an ongoing disaster, to be quite frank, and the reality is that the Airlines Association have actually been quite restrained about criticism because this disaster, in terms of compliance as they call it, has cost the airlines well over 100 million rand and has been going on for over 18 months since 226 instrument flight procedures were suspended. Actually, let me just make a correction here. ATNS says they suspend the procedures. Well, it's not strictly true. It's the Civil Aviation Authority that is the authority that suspends the procedures for non-compliance. So it's not as though this is a fresh problem. And in fact, it goes much further back than 18 months ago because these procedures needed to be renewed every 5 years. So they've had plenty of time. The key issue is the problem getting better or worse? Because yes, they've made promises and undertakings, and the Minister Creasy has made promises and set a timetable for procedures to be revalidated and reinstituted. But while that's happening, other procedures like these ones at Kruger and Mpumalanga are now becoming non-compliant and thus being cancelled. So steps back.
Mm-hmm. But Doctor, I mean, I hear your issue on, of course, non-compliance there, but on the side of maintenance, right, whose part, who's the guilty part here? Because those are relatively small airports, right? And I suppose the fleet, or should I say, should be easily manageable. We shouldn't be incurring such issues specifically at these smaller airports.
100% correct. The fault is squarely within the ambit of ATNS, their traffic navigation systems, the services, and no one else. And that is why the CEO, Ms. Mthatha, is suspended. And yes, they've been trying desperately to re-employ people who left, the skills, the talents that are required to maintain the compliance status of the instrument flight procedures left in wholesale over the past couple of years because of pretty much a toxic environment in the ATNS corporation, and simply because, too, the skills are in great demand around the world. So particularly in the Middle East and Australia, they took quite a few of our skilled systems compliance officers.
But just how far-reaching or serious is this problem then, Doctor? We do understand that, of course, the latest reports are indicating that some flights and operations have since resumed operations, right? Luckily for some of those agitated passengers. But how do these disruptions as well as delays directly affect productivity within the aviation industry, Doctor? And how do airports as well as airliners then both ensure the necessary checks and balances are in order? We're just chatting the other day about another issue that was quickly washed down as a systematic failure at the OR Tambo International Airport. Why is there such limited transparency, especially when customers are severely affected here? And that's just the nature of any good business practice, Doctor. You need to be transparent.
Well, it's not just transparency, it's a matter of competency. Yes, you've got to be transparent about your failures and set out to fix them. But the truth here is that actually that you've got to have the right staff, and you've got to have systems in place, and you've got to monitor the results. You've got to actually manage the results. And that was a huge failing of ATNS. And it meant that because we've got first world standards, you can't have inadequate management. The one thing, you can have poor management in some organizations, which you can get away with. But the air navigation services is an absolute key to aviation safety. And South Africa is not just a signatory, but is a key in the Chicago Convention, in the International Civil Aviation Organization. We are very proud of the standards we keep, but organizations like ATNS have just let the side down enormously, and the consequences are huge, because you might say, oh, well, it's just minor airports like Mthatha or George or Kruger Mpumalanga. But that has an enormous knock-on effect, because if tourists can't get out of KMIA, Kruger Mpumalanga, back to OR Tambo to catch their flights back, well, then they're going to miss their connecting flights. And that is where airlines like Airlink play an absolutely essential role. The air connectivity is absolutely essential for tourism in South Africa. And if ATNS can't keep those services operational, well, then people are just going to get extremely tired of sitting on the ground for an hour and a half in an airliner waiting for a slot to be opened up by ATNS so they can depart an hour and a half late. And the reason this lateness happens is because of knock-on effects, where we see a flight was delayed at Kruger Mpumalanga, and then it arrives late at OR Tambo, and then it gets late further on, and the entire system breaks down, and people start missing their long-haul connecting flights, and they say, well, thank you, we won't be coming back to South Africa, either as tourists or perhaps to invest other money in property businesses. So air connectivity is essential, and it has to be done properly.
I take it it's the staffing issue, Doctor. It keeps coming up because on our last conversation when we were relating to the strike, this was actually the issue at the very core of the tension there between the two sides there. The pilots were talking about some of these issues not being addressed. So thank you so much once again for bringing it up this time. Doctor, once again, we're going to leave it there. That is Dr. Guy Leitch, an aviation expert, weighing in on the recent delays in flights at some airports in the country, namely the Kruger International Park Airport, as well as, of course, some of the likes of even Mthatha.